שלום לכולם, שלום לכל מי שנמצא כאן, ושלום לכל מי שמגיע בעוד כמה דקות. ברוכים הבאים לוובינר הראשון בישראל, וובינר הראשון של שפת הציפורים. מתארח איתנו כאן ג'ון יאנג מהחוף המערבי של ארצות הברית. איזה כיף לראות את כולם מצטרפים. נהדר. וואו, כמה פרצופים מוכרים. איזה כיף. ברוכים הבאים כולם. אז אני רק רוצה להתחיל, כמו שאנחנו נוהגים להתחיל תמיד, בכמה מילים של הכרת תודה, והפעם אני רוצה להגיד תודה רבה לטכנולוגיה שמאפשרת לנו להיפגש בקצוות העולם ומכל קצוות הארץ. אז ממש תודה לכך שזה מתאפשר. ולפני שנעבור לאנגלית, אני רק רוצה לתת פה איזה כמה שניות של טכנולוגיה. אז ראשית כל, שוב ברוכים הבאים לכל המצטרפים. ראשית כל, השיחה הזאת מוקלטת, ואם יש איזושהי בעיה טכנית, אתם תקבלו את ההקלטה די במהרה אחרי סיום השיחה.
איך עושים בסאונד?
וחשוב מאוד שתקפידו שהמיקרופונים שלכם נמצאים במצב השתק. המיקרופון נמצא בצד שמאל למטה במסך של המחשב. מי שמתקשר אלינו מהמחשב, יש אפשרות לכתוב בצ'אט, הצ'אט הזה גלוי לכולנו, בתחתית המסך של הזום.
איזה מתן.
על צ'אט.
מתן פה עם המצלמה, לפני קריאת מהקורס.
אז של השיחה, אתם מוזמנים להקליד כמה מילים של הכרת תודה על הצ'אט, ואני עכשיו אעבור לאנגלית, ושוב נעשה סבב קצרצר פה של הצוות המוביל של הכרת תודה. So yeah, I'm moving on to English. Hello everyone. Hi John, good to have you here. I'm so grateful for technology that are allowing us to meet from around the world and around Israel with the comfort of staying in our houses, especially today when the weather is quite cool, at least where I live in the north part of Israel. And yeah, I'm so grateful to have you here, John. I'm really excited to introduce you. John is a dear friend. He's our mentor and teacher to bird language and other very, very important and interesting stuff. And please, John, you have the mic.
Thank you. So nice to see you all, and to imagine all of you in Israel right now. I'm not home in California where I normally am. I'm in New York State at a conference for nature connection leaders, and I'm seeing a lot of old friends, some of whom I've worked with for 25 years, and it's really good to be here, and it's really incredible to be at a conference of nature connection leaders and then to be talking to all of you in Israel. And just an amazing number of people have joined us today, which is really something else. How many of you are here right now? It's nice to see so many faces and so many children. Wow, what a gift to have so many children here. And I'm really grateful for the people who have kept the language of bird language alive, the knowledge of it alive, that I was able to learn it because of many great mentors. Almost all of them are indigenous. And all the great scientists who are verifying and double checking and bringing all this knowledge together. I'm really thankful for all the bird watchers out there who are helping and assisting in spreading bird language knowledge, not only because it's really fun and interesting to learn, but also because it's really good for nature connection. You know, practicing bird language is not just learning a skill, but it also is one of the best things to make us, make our nervous systems come back online in a really healthy way. So I'm really grateful for bird language too. Really thankful for Uri and Stefan and all the people that are helping and supporting to make this moment possible. And yeah, grateful to be here in good health and happiness. And I hope you all find yourselves in the same place. And I'm looking forward to going on a journey with you and sharing, and be very happy to have you use the chat, as I see some of you have figured out. And because I will once in a while stop and ask you some questions, and you can feel free to write them in English or whatever works for you, and then Stefan can translate if it's needed. Yeah, I just also want to put a plug in to really support what these people are doing in your country there to support bird language. They got a cool educators workshop coming up January 31st and February 1st, that I think you'll find really helpful. And if you want to take this home to your classrooms or whatever else. Yeah, so thank you so much. And you let me know when you're ready for me to share my screen and start to go on a journey of bird language. Are we ready?
Well, yes, go ahead, John.
All right, here we go. All right, so last time we did this, we had a little bit of a hiccup, so give me a second to make sure it all works, and I will be able to take you in to see a little slideshow. If you're having trouble seeing the slides, please do let us know. You know, Uri is paying attention to that side of things, and Stefan as well. So if it's not quite working for you, let me know, or let us know through the chat. So here we go. And we did test it. How's it working? I'll put it on full screen, and then that's the dangerous part. We're not sure if it works on full screen, but yes?
Yeah, it works.
All right. So here you can see, now what's happened for me, I just want you all to know that what's happened for me is that because I'm looking at my full screen to share the slideshow with you, I can't see the chat. So I'm going to depend on Stefan to just tell me what's going on there, because I won't be able to see it while I'm showing you the slides. Great. So yeah, we were approached in 2012 by a big bird conservation organization in the United States called the National Audubon Society. And they were very interested in developing a model with us that would really advance nature connection goals, because conservation is really based on people who have fallen in love with nature, who then take their time, their money, their expertise, and support conservation efforts to help, in this case, preserve birds and habitat, right? So they were noticing that the children in their education programs were not making nature connection a priority in their life. And so they said, can we design a program together? So we created this program called Bird Language Leaders, and it's now in 61 locations in the US. And I can tell you also it's in many places in Israel now, thanks to the people that are hosting this event here. But it's gone all over the world, Australia, it's taken off in Europe and UK and Canada and so on. So it's a very helpful program. It's now being taught in Spanish in Costa Rica as well, and it's moving around. And the symbol, the logo is a bird that you all have. I think you're going to call it a sparrowhawk there. I don't know what it is in Hebrew, but this bird is pretty much everywhere on the planet. I've seen it now on every continent where I've taught bird language. And the reason we center on this bird is because when it moves around the landscape, it puts out waves in front of it. All the songbirds know it's coming long before you do. And that's what those symbols are of the blue stripes and the yellow stripe out in front of that sparrowhawk. In our case, we call it a Cooper's hawk. So that's Bird Language Leaders. What we've done with Bird Language Leaders is we've cooperated with many organizations globally to create content to not only teach the bird language skills like I'm about to share with you, but also to share the best way to share bird language that enhances nature connection. And, you know, that's the leader's part of it, you know, how to facilitate nature connection as part of people's learning journey. So there you have the introduction to the logo. And Bird Language Leaders, you know, draws its roots, you know, quite honestly from indigenous knowledge, indigenous wisdom. And, you know, this man in this picture here is no longer with us. He's a Kalahari bushman by the name of Du. But he, like the birds and the animals depicted in the picture, always know where the lions are. So our nervous system as human beings has a legacy. And that legacy is that we want to keep our families safe. We want to keep ourselves safe. And so our ears and our other sensory systems are designed. I think, Uri, we need some help muting one of the microphones. Our nervous systems are designed essentially to respond to the communication system between the animals and the birds. When I'm with these bushmen, they always know where the lions are by paying careful attention to what the birds and animals are saying. And every being out in nature also does the same thing. And because if they don't do it, then they don't live very long. So even though I don't know the names of all these birds in this picture, because they're all from the Kalahari, I do know what their body language is saying. You know, and you do too, because just like you can read an emoji on your text messages, you immediately get the message with just a simple symbol. And when you see a bird with its neck stretched up on top of a branch, craning its neck and looking, it's nervous. You know, this bird is nervous. This bird is looking down with concern. This one is mobbing a baboon. You know, so this is bird language. And again, the roots of it are because our ancestors had to know where the lions were at all times. They were always paying attention to the inner communication of the animals and birds, and our nervous system is set up for that. So that's the premise of this. One of the board members of the National Audubon Society listened to the presentation I'm giving to you right now. I went on for 45 minutes, and when I was done, he said, "It sounds like what you said to me just now was birds talk to each other. We can learn to understand them and it's fun." And I said, "Yes, that is what I said." And he said, "Well, why didn't you just say that?" I said, "Because I didn't know I could have said that." So I put that right up front to honor Joe Ellis, because that is exactly what we're talking about here today. Birds talk to each other and animals do too. We can learn to understand them and it's fun. The bird hiding in the tree is an Ovambo sparrowhawk. I took that picture in the Kalahari in Africa. But you can see how it even hides, even when it's hunting. You know, it just, you can barely see it there, but that's the nature of that bird. I was really surprised when I was doing my bird language research with the Bushmen that the women had much greater knowledge and nuance of understanding of bird language than the men. And it occurred to me that every child, they have to grow up under the care of these women who are out gathering food out in the veld, separating into, you know, one mom with a couple of kids, because they have to spread out to gather their plant foods. And because they're spreading out, you know, they're more vulnerable to having an encounter with and a dangerous experience with a lion or a leopard or a hyena, you know, or any number of poisonous snakes. And so they have to know the difference between when the birds are upset because a mongoose is running by versus when the birds are upset because there may be a dangerous poisonous snake. I learned so much bird language from these women, but what really fascinated me was how incredibly alert those little children were. They were so tuned into bird language from the youngest age. And I thought, well, we should learn from these people how it is that they teach their children to be so completely aware of bird language. And I will come to that in a minute. They taught me their secret, if you will. So what I'm going to share with you are graphics from a book that I wrote in 2012 called What the Robin Knows, How the Birds Reveal the Secrets of the Natural World. The artist who created these graphics is named Kili Yu. And the slide show I'm presenting to you was put together by Josh Lane, who was one of the researchers who helped us put this book together, as well as this project. So one particular man who I will get to see in a couple hours here at the Nature Connection Leaders Conference, his name is Dan Gardoki, and he was the science editor for What the Robin Knows. And he came up with this concept that, in a way, your goal in bird language, if you want to boil it down to something really simple, is that you want your zone of awareness and your zone of disturbance to be in your mind. You want to be conscious of them. How big of a disturbance am I making? How big is my awareness, right? In modern times here in the US and other modern Western places where I go, people tend to have a small zone of awareness, almost like they're wearing it like clothing. It's so close to them. And they're spending a lot of time up inside their mind thinking about stuff. And if your zone of awareness is very small, your zone of disturbance is liable to be very big. And if your zone of disturbance is very big, you will be kind of broadcasting to the birds a long way off to fly away. And when the birds are flying away from you a long way off, the animals are moving even further off. This picture shows the deer running away close to the person, but really, truly, you wouldn't see the deer at all. You wouldn't even know that it ran off because it would be running off from so far away. So you might think of the goal of learning bird language is to reverse this trend, where your zone of awareness is small in this picture and your disturbance is big. You want to get to this next picture, where your disturbance is small and your awareness is big. Just simply shifting the position of those two changes everything. You start having more wildlife encounters, and when you do encounter wildlife, they're not afraid of you. You're having much more of a relaxed and connective experience. So again, Dan Gardoki came up with this concept, but this is exactly what happens when people study bird language. They go from a place where their awareness is small and their disturbance is big, to a place where their awareness is big and their disturbance is small. And we're human beings, so at any point in our day, we could be in either of those places. You know, if we practice mindfulness or meditation, you know, that kind of thing, we tend to have more awareness and less disturbance. So, you know, that's the goal here. And, you know, we start by first recognizing, you know, what are the birds saying about us, okay? I can see that the bird is saying that about the hawk and that about the jackal. What is the bird saying about me? As soon as you start to pay attention to that, you'll start to notice that people who aren't necessarily aware of the effect that they're having on the birds, because they might think, well, birds don't think I'm relevant at all. I'm a human, modern human moving around in my world, and the birds are in their world, and our worlds don't meet. So therefore, they have nothing to say about me, which is not true at all. Birds speak about you all the time. And the question is, what are they saying about you? And, you know, are they saying, get out of here, this is dangerous? Like in this case, we call this a bird plow, because the birds are being plowed up, you know. And the birds are taking a considerable risk when they go into a bird plow, because the bird plow is very attractive for the sparrowhawk. It's easier for the sparrowhawk to hunt a bird that's flying away in a panic. And you might think about something like, if you've ever been out at sea and you're in a boat and the dolphins are riding right on the front of the boat. And the reason they're riding on the front of the boat is because it's easier for them to catch fish that have been affected by the pressure wave of the boat. So they're hunting off the wake of your boat. In the same way, the sparrowhawk will hunt off the wake of a person who's causing a bird plow. And that's something that we want to be careful of, because nowadays songbirds are in a lot of trouble, and the hawks, these particular hawks, the sparrowhawks, are not so much in trouble. In America, we have a great proliferation of the sparrowhawk and a great reduction in songbirds. So we like to ask people, who would you rather feed right now? Would you rather feed the hawk or the songbird? The songbirds are having a harder time right now because of habitat destruction and insecticides, reducing their prey base and so on. So let's try to help the songbirds and make the commitment to not cause a bird plow. Can any of you think, or maybe say in the chat, if you were causing a bird plow up until this morning, or this evening, I guess, in Israel, right? Is it evening there? How might you change your style, your moving style on the landscape to not cause bird plows anymore, to be conscious of that? What might you do? Make a few suggestions in the chat. We'll see what Stefan has to say in a moment. So while you're thinking about that, and by the way, this test, we're not going to keep records on how you answer, so please don't be shy. We won't hold it against you. This is Josh Lane's hand, and his hand is over some beetle tracks in the sand. And you see, these are African lion tracks. So he and I were, myself, him, and Dan Gardoki were participating in this research with the San Bushmen this particular year. And we were having our morning coffee, and here the early morning sun was showing us these wonderful lion tracks in the sand, very close to where we were having coffee. And they pointed out suddenly, hey, check that out, and here's these 4 of these adolescent male lions moving very close to us and just kind of looking at us from a distance as they were walking. They weren't particularly interested in us. I guess we didn't look very delicious. And they seemed to be on their way somewhere. This is a real thing. In the Kalahari, these people are dealing with this on a daily basis. And a few moments later, I found myself just maybe 20 minutes drive up a sand road to where these people were gathering some roots from underground that happened to be very delicious and full of moisture and really delicious to eat and to enjoy the hydration qualities of this plant called cambrua. And that's what these ladies in the middle are doing. They're digging the root. Now I'll pause there for a second because there's an interesting thing that happened, and I got humbled on this day, and I'll share that with you. But what are people saying in the chat, Stefan? And what kind of ideas are people coming up with?
Well, we have some answers going in, and Rina is suggesting quiet jogging, and Shai is suggesting slow down. Eitan is suggesting walk aware and barefoot.
Nice.
Khalil is suggesting walk quietly. Tagil is saying not making sudden movements. Yaniv says wide vision, yay. Tal is saying slow fox walk, looking wide at the area. Adi Avigail goes, be in love with what is around me. Lior is suggesting also wide vision. And Eitan is adding something, is saying sit still. Oh, we have more going in. Shachar is saying stop. Oh, and that one is a great one. Lior is saying give thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you, everybody. These are all very useful tips. And if you kind of put them all together, mash them together, and start to practice these things, you will find that they actually work. Looks like someone else may have just added something, Stefan.
Yeah. Nadav is inviting us to listen to trees.
Yes, all of these are great suggestions. And mash them together, and you will stop creating a bird plow. There's no doubt about it. So here, I know the 4 lions are walking in this direction. I've just seen them with my own eyes. We drive in the same direction as the lions, but we drive out ahead of them. And we go another 20 minutes up the sand road, and we find this Bushman group. And so now all I can think of is coming from this direction are 4 lions on foot. And now we're out in the middle of the Kalahari with these people. And I'm looking at these people and I'm thinking to myself, geez, they've really lost their skills. Look at them. They're completely relaxed. They're not paying attention at all to the bird language. They don't even know the lions are walking towards them, and they're surely walking this way right now. And what happened to these poor bushmen? They must have lost their bird language knowledge. So, you know, a moment later, I hear these bird alarms from my left, from the direction that I'm most concerned about. And it's these birds that the bushmen themselves told me the year before will tell you when a lion is on the move. And they're called pied babblers. I don't know if you have a translation for the babbler in Hebrew, but or something like it. What might it be in Israel? Something similar.
A babbler is a zanvan.
Zanvan. Great. So now the Bushman hunters are looking at me and they're very concerned. They have big eyes and they're like asking the translator, why is John, what's wrong with John? What's wrong with him? You know? And I said, aren't you guys worried? You told me the babblers tell us when the lions are coming, and here comes the lions. And the Bushmen start laughing. And so I'll stand up a little bit here because what they said next was, oh no, John, you know, and they start touching their stomach right here, you know, right where your nerve bed is, you know, where we get a gut feeling, okay? And these Bushman hunters are saying, no, 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 the babblers are our friends. They will tell us when the lions are coming. And I said, yeah, of course. But aren't those babblers talking about lions right now? He says, no, 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 that's babbler stuff. That's babblers yelling at babblers, you know, that has nothing to do with lions. No, no. And then they laughed. And then I'm thinking to myself, of course these Bushmen are relaxed. Because if they were nervous, then it's like bird language. You know, if the Bushmen are nervous, then I should pay attention. And then I found out later that indeed those 4 lions had gone in a completely different direction right after we seen them, and they were miles away and we were completely safe. So yeah, I mean, these people have 100,000 years of bird language practice and they're really good at it. So I got humbled in that moment. Anything being shared there that I need to know at the moment?
Uri sent us a picture of a pipe bubbler.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
And we have some technical stuff coming in, so yeah.
All good for me though. Okay.
Yeah, all good.
So I just want to show you, this is one of the most common bird language patterns we see here where I am right now. I'm actually in New York State. I'm 3,000 miles from my home, but I grew up here where I am now, just a little bit south of here in New Jersey. And this was a common pattern that I grew up with. And I know it looks like 2 birds sitting in 2 trees. And so is that bird language? Well, birds are always sitting in trees. But in this case, you have on the left kind of a woodpecker who is clearly not feeding, because woodpeckers stand on the trunks of trees, you know. So if this is the trunk, the woodpecker would be stuck to the trunk and he would be pecking like this on the wood, right, looking for insects. But this bird is actually on the edge of a shrub, and it's looking, not feeding. And at the same time, this robin is on top of a pine tree, stretching and craning. And when the robin and the flicker in 2 different places in the area where I am, in fact, all across North America, I've seen the same pattern, because these birds are all across North America, both species. When you see these 2 birds in high positions at the same time, giving certain call notes, it's where we, the bird language people, are 100% sure this is a sign that a Cooper's hawk, which is like your sparrowhawk, is on the move. So birds cooperate with each other, and you end up knowing, if you go out in your backyard a lot, right where you live now, and you spend time sitting and watching, as was suggested, being in great gratitude, using your wide angle vision, your peripheral vision, sitting calmly and quietly, and just with questions in your mind. Oh, what's that bird doing? What's that bird doing? What's its body language telling me? You'll start to notice what we call these guild patterns. Guild meaning 2 different kinds of birds cooperating in a group, a guild, right? So there's a lot of bird communication guilds. And I wonder if folks in Israel have noticed things like this. Do you have guild behaviors? And if you do, put them in the chat, and maybe Uri and Stefan have to participate, because I'm sure by now they've figured out the guilds for the local sparrowhawk where they live. And you know, the thing is, the reason I point this out to you is because it doesn't look like anything. You might think bird language is always loud, it's always noisy, it's always easy to see. In this case, birds sitting still on the top of a tree. It may not occur to you that it is bird language, but it is, you know, so let's pay attention to some of the more subtle things that are happening around you, and don't think that it's always going to be loud and noisy, though I will happily share with you some loud and noisy patterns as well. Have you put anything in that chat, or has anybody talked about a species guild pattern for the sparrowhawk yet?
Well, it's quiet here about that right now. Yeah. Well, I'm sure some of the folks here, which are familiar with bird language, can definitely say that. Oh, here we have one coming in. Today, Palestinian sunbird and the greenfinch were warning about the sparrowhawk. And surprisingly, the gray tits were quiet, which are the ones that usually alarms about the sparrowhawks in our area. That's
wonderful.
Nadav says that. Thank you, Nadav.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, see, the people in Israel are already picking this up, right? It's happening. Yeah. It's very good, very, very good. Thank you. So the position that these two birds are in, we call sentinel. And, you know, sentinel just means looking. You know, you climb up to the top of something and you look in the distance. In this case, the crow is sentineling on a dog that probably left a mark on the fire hydrant. So birds will tell you about things moving on the ground. They may not say anything. They just might fly over and look. But if their beak is pointing down, you know, I've often used crows and ravens to tell me where, for instance, a carcass has been hidden by a mountain lion in California, you know. Or one day I found a group of coyotes because a raven flew over and looked down, and because it looked down while it was flying, it dipped. And I was able to spot the coyotes on the ground. So you can use bird behavior, it may not make a sound, it's just where they're looking, sentinel. So look to see what the birds are looking at. That opens the door to what we call ground predator alarms, things moving on the ground and what the birds might be saying. So this came from Josh Lane, this series. He was in California, and as he was walking into this wild habitat along the Pacific Ocean coast, there's some beautiful open space there. He finds these lovely cat tracks in the mud, and these cat tracks are slightly larger than a house cat, so he knew it wasn't a house cat. He knew it wasn't a lion, and he was walking on the landscape ahead, and then he saw this. Okay, so you see 4 different species of birds. On the left, we have a junco, the smaller one, and we have a California quail, the bigger one. And on the right, a robin, and on the right, a junco. And they're forming this arc shape, and the arc shape is moving along the bushes. And he's watching these birds follow and shout and point with their beaks, moving at the speed of a cat. And he said there was this clearing between the bushes, and he knew that whatever was causing the alarm was about to step into the field of view. So of course, being that there's a question mark, you can guess what I'm going to say to you. What do you think appeared where the question mark is next? And you're welcome to type your answer into the chat. Any takers yet, Stefan?
Yeah, well, it says, Tal Niv says that it's the cat, apparently.
Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, everyone's just waiting. I don't want to be wrong. Be wrong. It's fun to be wrong. We learn by...
Near is suggesting it's a man.
Ah, nice. Good. It's good. You got to be curious. You got to put your ideas out there. It's a science. So we're going to test.
All right. We have more coming in. Eitan says it's a cat. Yoavi says it's a lynx.
A lynx, which is a kind of a cat. Yeah.
A bobcat. Tomer is suggesting a bobcat, question mark.
All right. Let's stop right here. He's right. It's a bobcat. Yeah. And this is a common cat, you know, again, bigger than a house cat, smaller than a lion, and it is like a lynx. You know, it's a very close cousin of the lynx. So that lynx answer was great. But yeah, I mean, it's so predictable. When birds move in an arc slowly at the speed of a cat, you know, along the bushes, you can pretty well guess there's a cat under there. And it works for all cats. You know, we call this the cat alarm. We call it a slow-moving parabolic, meaning that this ring shape, the half a circle shape, is moving along, following the predator as it moves along the ground. You know, so it's showing you progress. There's 2 rings here, just showing you that the ring was here and then it's here, indicated by the birds moving and following the cat through their territory. So a cat with that body language is most definitely going to get this treatment. Just like if you have certain body language, you're going to get a bird plow, right? So a lot of the things that you've all suggested about, you know, having gratitude, talking to trees, using your peripheral vision, slowing down, stopping once in a while, all these things change your body language. And the animals and birds are really taking cues off your body language because it indicates your intent. In this case, you know, the intent of this cat is clear. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that this cat is hunting, and the birds are certainly not happy about it, right? So this works with all cats. And in Africa, we were able to be in the right place at the right time for this photograph because our guides, who were trained by Bushmen when they were children, were able to get out ahead of that leopard by following that same slow-moving parabolic through the thickets and the thick bush that we couldn't see into. And he made a prediction of where that cat was going to pop out. He went over and parked the safari vehicle there, and sideways to the trail, the leopard walked straight to us, you know, which is beautiful, you know, and it's very helpful to know where leopards are when you're on foot in Africa. In our case, we were in a truck, so we were safe, but we've often walked for miles and miles in trailing leopards on foot as well. And it's not hard to find them because the baboons are talking about them, and the starlings are talking about them, and the tree squirrels are talking about them, and it makes it quite easy. Some comments in the chat there, Stefan. Don't forget to open your mic. I'm pretty good at reading lips, but not that good.
Sorry about that. Uri is letting us know that the closest species to a bobcat here in Israel, it's called caracal. It's a type of a cat.
I know the caracal.
Yeah, and Nir is suggesting that the leopard is it looks almost like the local, well, there's a type of a leopard here. So Nir is mentioning that as well.
Yeah, this is a beautiful animal here.
And Vor is asking, why do they follow the cat instead of fleeing?
Well, because the cat can't catch them. You know, the baboons are up in the trees shouting, the squirrels are up in the trees shouting, the starlings are flying over and diving at it. And, you know, the leopard isn't really looking to hunt the birds or the tree squirrels. It's actually looking to probably catch an impala. That's what they're mostly hunting in this place. But boy, the impala are snorting. You know, when this leopard's coming, the impala are making these loud snorting sounds from a distance. And that's probably why leopards hunt at night. Because what's the point of trying to hunt during the day if everywhere you go during the day, everybody's yelling at you? It makes it really hard for them to hunt by day. I happened to notice something that this leopard did later on. It actually laid down and pretended it was sleeping until all of the things that were yelling at it gave up and, you know, went about their business again. As soon as everything went away, she would wake up and start walking towards the impala again, really slowly through the grass, right? And she'd get about 10 minutes of peace, and then she'd be spotted again, and she'd be harassed. And the impala would start looking and snorting, but they couldn't see her. They didn't know where she was. And then she'd lay down and start licking her paws, and she'd lay down and go back to sleep. So she took the same webinar that we're on right now, and she learned all those lessons about relaxing, stopping, doing some wide angle vision, maybe a little gratitude for the peace and quiet, right? They used the same tricks, which was pretty enlightening. Yeah. So some other things being said there in the chat.
Yeah. There's a question from Mr. T. I'm not sure who that is. Aren't they alarming out of kind of solidarity to one another?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was telling you earlier about the guild idea. You know, they're cooperating to keep each other safe. So yes, absolutely. It is solidarity. Yeah. And it makes sense. I mean, there's all kinds of now scientific evidence that this solidarity is happening all throughout the animal kingdom, both on land and in the water. So yeah, exactly. So when a cat is showing a different kind of body language, like this cat here, you know, if you were walking up to your own house and your cat walked up to you like that with its tail up and curled and looking really happy and, you know, nice stretched up neck, and, you know, it's coming in a really relaxed greeting. This is not a hunting cat. And so the birds aren't as afraid of it, and they'll just kind of fly up and land and look back at it, right? We call it a hook because the flight shape is to fly away, not like a bird plow where they keep going, but a short flight away, just get enough height, land and turn around and look back. And this often indicates, you know, somebody's coming, but not in a dangerous way, right? So this is the kind of bird language you want to cause. You want to cause a hook too. You want the birds to respectfully give you a little distance, look back at you, but not yell at you or fly away in fear. So a hook pattern is actually a compliment. It also means the bird doesn't have any fear of you. So some house cats are not very good at hunting, and the birds in the neighborhood know that that cat isn't a hunting cat, but they also know that that gray cat over there is a bird killer and it has a reputation. So even two cats in the same neighborhood will get different kinds of bird language depending on their reputation. So remember that too, that the birds know each animal that lives where they are as an individual, not just as a species, but that one is good at catching birds. That one is lazy and never tries to catch birds, right? And they know the difference. They're very intelligent, and they, you know, the reason they don't alarm more than they have to is because it takes energy to alarm. So they'll only do exactly what they have to do and no more. When a fox, in this case a fox, probably a jackal where you are, when a fox, you probably have foxes too though, don't you? Yeah, so when a fox is just trotting along the landscape, the birds have nothing to fear, but they're still going to get out of the way. So do you see the series of hooks? Right? There's like one hook, two hooks, three hooks in this slide. And a series of hooks in rapid succession looks like popcorn. The birds are popping out of the top of the bushes as the fox is moving out of sight. And children named it popcorn. I like the name. I think it's a great name for this particular alarm sequence. Joggers often cause popcorn. Dogs trotting, wolves trotting, coyotes, jackals trotting cause popcorn. Deer, you know, deer trotting will also cause popcorn. I think it's more about trotting than it is about the animal, right? So again, joggers cause popcorn. So this is interesting because this is a very specific alarm. And this is one of the ones that the Bushman women already knew when I got there. And I was particularly glad to document this one for our book. We have these things called weasels in the US, and I know you guys have weasels too. I don't know what you're calling them in Israel, but maybe you want to type that. And you can tell me because I am curious.
We do have weasels. They're more, we don't have them, a lot of them, but we do have beach martens, and we have mongoose, a lot of mongoose.
Yes, okay, great. So mongoose and weasels are going to cause the same kind of alarm pattern, right? When the weasel is in the open, the birds yell at it with extra vigor because a weasel is definitely going to try to catch a bird. Now, weasels are scary because they're moving along the ground, but a second later they could be up in the bush, right? And what they often do is they move forward a little bit, they disappear for a second, and then they reappear right where they were. You know, so they're playing tricks on the birds. You know, they're playing tricks on the mice and the chipmunks and the squirrels. And they make everybody super nervous. So when the weasel is visible, the bird is shouting with extra vigor. And when the weasel disappears into the bush, like in the second panel, as soon as that weasel disappears, the bird gets really quiet and starts looking around frantically, like, where are you? I know you could be right behind me. So they're literally jumping on their perch, backwards, forwards, trying to figure out where this weasel went, but they're making no sound at that moment. Second it reappears into their field of vision, they fly back over to where it is and they start shouting again. And because it's so vigorous when the weasel is visible and suddenly silent, what you'll hear in the distance is a whole bunch of bird sounds, really nervous, and then silence. A whole bunch of bird sounds, really nervous, silence. A whole bunch of bird sounds, really nervous, silence. So you can detect them on the landscape a pretty good distance away. I told Josh Lane when I got back to the US that I was able to find a mongoose using the same pattern. And he got so excited when he came to Africa, he wanted to see if he could find a mongoose. And this is our weasel in the US, a little mammal that can run down mouse trails because it's so skinny, right? But then it can climb a tree a second later. They're incredibly aggressive and they're amazing hunters. So you have the beech marten and you have mongoose, which are going to cause the same pattern in Israel. So one day we had just been out on a game drive and it was the heat of the day, and these African wild dogs had just killed an impala, and this is the dominant male, the alpha male, and they had eaten the whole thing and it was completely gone except for a few hooves and a little patch of hair. Even the blood was licked up. I mean, there was literally nothing left. And these guys, they all had their stomach really big, like they just ate this big meal. Like in California, you get a big burrito with sour cream and avocado, and you eat the whole thing, and then you feel like, oh my God, I need to lay down and rest, you know, so you have a gut bomb going on. So these guys had a gut bomb, and the temperature was well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's hot. And it's late afternoon, and they're all sleeping. And this one has decided that an elephant dropping would make a great pillow. And he's the alpha male, so he's kind of in charge of making sure he's paying attention for everybody. So those great big ears, you know, he's asleep, and then his big ears go really big, and they point in a direction, and his eyes open, and he looks for a second, and then he closes his eyes, and his ears relax. And he keeps doing that while he's sleeping. And at one point, his ears turned to one side, his eyes opened, he looked for a second, and he put his head back down. But Josh Lane then listened in the distance to what that dog had listened to, and he heard loud bird sounds and squirrel sounds, silence. Loud bird sounds, silence. And he said to Brian Gibson, could that be a mongoose over there, Brian? And Brian listens and he's like, yeah, Josh, I would call that a mongoose alarm. And he said, can we go see? And Brian turned to all the other people in the vehicle and said, would you mind? Because we've been sitting watching for 45 minutes sleeping dogs. And, you know, after you watch sleeping dogs for 45 minutes, you're ready for something else. And we drove over to this place. Josh has his camera ready, and bing, he gets that picture, which he's so proud of. You know, he was really proud that he was able to follow bird language in another country, right, to find this mongoose who has the same kind of alarm as the weasel in America. So any comments or questions coming in here that I need to address?
Uri is updating us that 100 Fahrenheit is 40 Celsius, and there were some interpretation for mongoose and beech marten, and yeah, that's it, I guess. And a weasel.
Oh, great. So as you can see, this stuff translates, right? Bird language translates from continent to continent. It's pretty predictable in every location. And so far, everything I've shared with you, you're going to find right where you are. And that's what's fun about it. Here's another one that's really common, which is that when it's nesting season and birds have eggs and babies in their nests, they get very, very mob oriented. They come in big groups in solidarity to chase away things that eat baby birds and eggs. So we call this the nest robber parabolic, similar to the cat shape, often up in the trees or, you know, in the bushes, and usually a lot more birds involved than, you know, for a cat walking through. In this case, you know, the Norway rat is a nest robber in the city. The graphic artist who created these graphics, Keeley, watched the rat out the window of his studio, climbing up into the trees. He saw the birds doing this very thing, and he included that from his own personal experience. Often it's a snake. In the Kalahari, it's often a snake doing this in the trees. In America, nest robbers are typically crows or ravens, sometimes tree squirrels at that time of year. Yeah, so in the winter time when they're not nesting, and if you see the same pattern, very often it's an owl that they've discovered on the roost. So this very intense, you know, many birds in a cloud around something that you can't see. In the wintertime, out of season is often an owl that they've discovered on its roost, or a nest robber in the spring. So some questions and comments coming in there.
Eitan that joined us is asking, did you ever notice a special call for a certain predator except of the hawk?
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. And now there's scientists who have even documented this. There's one particular bird in the east of the US called the tufted titmouse, which is probably related to the tit that you were talking about earlier. This woman named Dr. Katie Sieving at the University of Florida actually created a dictionary, a lexicon, you know, for 55 distinct vocalizations that indicate 55 different specific things. A red-tailed hawk, like your buzzard, common buzzard, flying in a relaxed way, the tufted titmouse says one thing. When it's flying in a dive to hunt, it says a different thing. When a fox is walking along, not hunting, it says one thing. When the fox is hunting, it says a different thing. So there's hundreds of those things that have been documented. So, and I personally know many of them in my own neighborhood. You know, I've gotten to know what the raven is saying when he sees a particular thing. And we can all do that in our own neighborhood. You'll start to see and notice these kinds of patterns the more you pay attention. And the thing is, you know, you want to share them with other people so that you can compare notes and ideas and ask each other questions. It's fun, you know, it's fun to learn bird language from each other. We're getting quite a flurry of comments here.
Yeah, just before I read the comments, I wanted to share that, was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday that we had a second-year student meeting in Uri's place. And one of the participants, Tamar, she's an elder, she's an exceptional person. She shared how she noticed a group of parrots. We have a lot of them here now, kind of doing exactly that alarm shape on a tree, and she didn't understand what's going on. And she went over there and she realized there's a small kitten stuck in the top of that tree.
Wow.
And the parrots were going absolutely crazy about it and, you know, bomb diving it. And like the poor thing was stuck there for hours. So yeah, it's really, it works here as well.
Well, I do hope someone rescued the kitten.
Well, I'll need to ask that. I'll need to ask Tamar about that.
Okay.
There's some questions here about bulbuls and sunbirds approaching resting little owls.
Yes, bulbuls. I've seen that in Africa, the red-eyed bulbul, right? I think it's called the red-eyed bulbul. I can't remember, but yeah, I was aware of the bulbul's relationship to the little pearl-spotted owlet. But I don't know about Israel, and I don't know your bulbul there, but I think it's probably similar.
Yeah, it's almost the same, and they are very, very, they have a lot of opinions about owls and jays and crows and everybody that approach their territory, especially in nesting period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
So there's another question here. Who's in Israel is a nest robber? Ofer Atari is asking that. And pretty much the same as in the States. We have the jays and the ravens. When I will say the crows, I'll say those names in Hebrew. The jay is Orvani. And the crows, we have different types of them. Orev Afor, Orev Shachor. So all of them are nest robbers if they have the opportunity.
And also snakes probably too, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Now we have some comments coming in about that from some students of ours. Yeah, Lior Shachar says that the jay is a nest robber, and Lior says that a jay and crows and snakes.
Mongoose probably too.
Mongoose, yeah, definitely, and rats as well. Even some lizards, which I don't know the names in English though.
Yeah, we have probably something like a monitor lizard in Africa, that big water monitor, big guy that moves along the ground kind of slow. In Australia, it's called a goanna, the birds go crazy on the goanna during nesting season because it's climbing up in the trees and looking in the nest holes, you know, trying to find the babies and things. So yeah, I can see that for sure. Very cool. Wow, thanks for your participation and your interest and your stories, everybody. That makes it so much more fun to have a group sharing about bird language. It's already working, see? Wonderful. Let's move up into the air now. There's what I was talking about earlier, posting to Sentinel. It's probably the most common shape that you're going to see. Birds flying up and looking in the distance because they want to have early warning of the approach of a hawk because a hawk can be so dangerous to them. But not all hawks can catch birds, right? So the buzzard you see in this picture, the big winged, slow moving, soaring, you know, small eagle basically, not a great bird hunter, but still gets respect, right? But that behavior, that sentinel behavior is a stretched neck, looking in the distance kind of behavior versus, you know, a bird that's kind of bringing its head down into its shoulders and feeling all relaxed. You know, a bird at rest looks one way, a bird in sentinel looks a different way. And, you know, learning to differentiate between them is important for you when you're learning bird language. So this is the bird that Josh Lane found in his chicken coop. It had gotten in the chicken coop, but then couldn't get back out. So it killed the chicken and decided to just hang out and eat it. And Josh went in the chicken coop with it and was taking pictures of it at close range. But this is that sparrowhawk. We call this one a Cooper's hawk. It's a slightly bigger sparrowhawk. We have a smaller sparrowhawk called the sharp-shinned hawk, and we have a bigger one called the Cooper's hawk. But this bird absolutely is the terror of the neighborhood. At any point, I could walk outside, even where I am here right now, I could walk outside and spend 5 minutes looking around and I could figure out where this bird is hiding by what the birds are saying, because they never, from sunup till sundown, they never let their guard down when it comes to this bird. It's too dangerous to not pay attention to all day long. And if everyone pays attention and shares information with each other, then what results is that the people who are in a safe zone can eat, and the ones who are in a danger zone have to wait. So it pays. Why solidarity? Because it pays. Hey, as long as this bird is near me, I'll tell all of you. That way you can eat because you know where he is. And when he comes over to your neighborhood, then you tell me, and then that way I can eat. So they're kind of doing each other a favor. Hello there, person who's waving at me, small person. And this is some of the ways that Cooper's hawk bird language is expressed. One we call the bullet, because the birds are flying horizontally so fast that you can't even tell what they are. And that means a Cooper's hawk is close at hand, not far away, but close, and it's flying towards them right now, and they're trying to get out of there, last-ditch effort. They often fly through thick branches to where that the bird can't get through. They'll hang out in chain link fences because they know that the Cooper's hawk can't get through the chain link fence, and they'll use the chain link fence for cover in cities. But they'll dive into thick bushes, and we call that ditching. You know, they drop like stones and disappear into the thicket, into the bush. These are patterns that describe a hunting and moving Cooper's hawk. And there's more patterns. There's this one, which my friend Dan Gardoki, the science editor, has nicknamed a birdsicle, because if a bird is out feeding in the middle of a field, suddenly realizes that it's too late to run and hide, they freeze right where they are. And they'll be absolutely stone still, hoping that if they sit still enough, the hawk won't notice them. Because it's true, when those birds are hunting, they're looking for movement. They're not looking for what's still. They're looking to see who's running in an obvious way, because they're flying 35 miles an hour. You know, hunting. So if you sit still, maybe you'll get lucky. And I think it works enough, because sometimes you'll see entire flocks of bird caught out in the open that completely freeze suddenly. It's like, it's amazing to see it. So Dan Gardoki nicknamed this the birdsicle. And he's calling it a visual form of oppression, meaning when the hawk, you know, if you're in birdsicle and you're frozen in a field and that hawk lands in a tree, and it's sitting there in the tree for a while, you can't afford to do anything but freeze. So if that hawk is there for 10 minutes in that tree, you're frozen for 10 minutes. You know, so since he put this bird alarm out to the Bird Language Network, people brought in many, many pictures and stories of birdcicles in their own neighborhood. So it's probably happening in Israel too. Anybody tell you about birdcicles or anything related to what we just shared there, Stefan?
Well, Uri is giving a lot of transcription for English names is translating to Hebrew. Thank you for that, Uri. You're doing such a good job. We have we have the Hebrew names for the aerial predator alarms here, and Uri have just invented the Hebrew name for a birdcicle, which is like a game of kids where they're supposed to freeze.
Excellent. That's wonderful. Thank you, Uri. That's so fun. All right, good. This is what the Cooper's hawk or the sparrowhawk might be saying. It's down there somewhere, but I can't see it because it's frozen, right? Yeah, down there somewhere. Don't move a muscle. You'll be safe. Where are you? Shh, don't move. So that is the birdcicle. How do you say it in Hebrew?
In Hebrew, it will go echad, shtaim, shalosh, dag maluach.
Wow, that's a lot of words.
Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, salty fish.
Nice. Excellent.
We have some. Oria says that he met a young zigzag. I have no idea what a zigzag in English is. It's a really cool bird, very aggressive, and it nests on the ground. So he met a young one, and that one just froze until he backed up. Oh, and there's a good question here from Eli. He asks, do any mammals do the birdcicle?
Definitely. I mean, we've seen rabbits do that. Certainly, you must have seen rabbits do that, right? Mice, squirrel, yeah, they all do it for sure. You know, it's like last ditch effort, you know, and it's too late and you freeze in the hopes that it keeps you alive. And people do it too, you know, when we're playing these games, right? Like you get caught in the game of hide and seek, you hope that no one will see you. If I can't see them, maybe they can't see me, kind of thing. So it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's the name of that game that Uri translated. It's Who is Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf. That's Uri's translation to birdcicle. Yeah, there's the translation for a zigzag. It's a spur-winged plover.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Our plover does the same thing in America. Our plovers have the same trick. Yeah.
Yeah. Yaniv is mentioning a conversation we had yesterday about exactly that alarm shape of a birdcicle, with a sparrowhawk that is diving into his seat spot, and he kind of figured that few birds had a birdcicle reaction to that sparrowhawk flying in. And there's some more local name of games that can relate to the birdcicle alarm shape. That's great, guys. That's really
Thank you
amazing.
all. Thank you for sharing all this. This is wonderful. You guys are going to have so much fun with bird language. This is so great. So great. Well, our next one is the kind of alarm that a buzzard would cause in your country. You know, just the birds aren't diving and hiding, but they're just lowering themselves. So, you know, we'll literally have flocks of blackbirds all in the treetops singing and singing, making lots of sound. And then all of a sudden they'll stop singing, they'll drop a few feet, and then they'll all start singing again just a second later. So they're basically saying, well, I'm not going to make it easy for the buzzard to pick me off the top of the tree, but I'm also not too worried because I know he's not going to try to fly his big kite-like body into a bush and get all tangled in the branches. So they're just telling you, we respect you, but we're not terribly afraid of you. You know, so that's an example of how different, you know, these alarms can be from one hawk to another. You know, very, very different. So this is our buzzard in North America. We call it the red-tailed hawk, but it, you know, they're common. You see them pretty much every day in the countryside. They don't create great alarms, but they do, you know, the birds do talk about them, right? But not as intensely and as fearfully as they would with a Cooper's hawk, or what you would call a sparrowhawk. This is one of my favorite pictures. Not sure how it's coming out on your screen, but because of all the different shades here, but you see somebody on a workshop with Stefan and Yael and Uri, and they're all going to their sit spot during the bird sit. And one of them is leaning against a nice cypress tree there in the thicket and has been really relaxed, has been talking to the birds and the trees and gratitude and using his peripheral wide angle vision. And he notices that the little birds are feeding very close to him. They're on the ground feeding, they're in the branches feeding, but they're very, very quiet. So when we all come back from our sit spot and we start talking about it and drawing on the maps where I was sitting, where you were sitting and all that, you can say, well, hey, during that third period of time, everything was clearly safe. Why? Well, because I had all these little birds sitting right next to me feeding. And then I'll be like, but all the people around you said it was totally silent and there wasn't a sound to be heard for a long distance, you know, so it's birdsicle basically, right? And yeah, but these birds were so relaxed. I said, but were they in the bushes really close to you where they could be hiding from something else? Oh yeah, actually that's true, you know. But if you look in the very background of that picture in the lightly, you know, shaded tree, you see the outline of a sparrowhawk, right? Because the sparrowhawk will fly in and perch in a hidden place and you won't see it, but it'll be completely silent around that bird for a long distance. Everybody's in the birdsicle game now. And if you happen to be sitting out within that zone of silence, the birds around you will literally come up to you really close because they know the sparrowhawk is afraid of you. So they're actually using you for cover. And so we call this safety barrier, where the presence of one animal or bird gives safety to the others, right? An interesting twist on this story is that we have these little tiny birds called hummingbirds. I think, I'm not sure if they're in your neighborhood or not, but we have these little tiny birds called hummingbirds. And a Cooper's hawk couldn't catch a hummingbird if it wanted to. They're super fast and they're very aggressive and they have no fear of Cooper's hawks. But Cooper's hawks build a nest in a tree in the springtime. And jays really like to eat hummingbirds and hummingbird babies. But Cooper's hawks really like to eat jays. So if you put all that together, when you find a Cooper's hawk nest, you'll find it surrounded by hummingbird nests. And the jays won't go anywhere near them. So this is also a safety barrier. You know, one thing using another for safety. So that means when you're out there and birds are feeding next to you when it's otherwise a place to be silent, you're in the conversation. You know, you are not an irrelevant human being who doesn't have anything to do with nature. Nature is actually interacting with you in meaningful ways. So I think that's a fun thing to know. We have some comments.
There's a lot of buzz going on around the names, like the red-tailed hawk is it's almost like a buzzard here, and Nadav is asking what's the buzzard the red tail is feeding on.
Squirrels, rabbits, gophers, things that live on the ground, mammals. Yeah.
And yeah, well, there's a translation for a hummingbird. It's pretty much a sunbird. Well, that's the closest type we have around here. And there's some comments about what's a jay, and somebody Nadav is answering. It's in Hebrew. The name is Orvani. And Lior is asking about what's the other name the jays. The name of the bird that the jays are eating, and I guess it's the hummingbird, right?
Yeah. Correct. Yep.
Great.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. So if you take the big picture now, and now we can look at the birdsicle game from a different vantage point. We're looking sideways at a landscape here. And this landscape could be 200 meters across or more, okay? So in the center of this landscape, you have that same hawk I was telling you about earlier, the sparrowhawk, sitting in a hiding place inside of a thick cypress, in your case probably, right? Or a juniper. And sitting out there is one of the workshop participants with Uri and Yael and Stefan running a bird language workshop. And they're experiencing the safety barrier. But over here you see a bird and birdsicle and a squirrel and birdsicle. Everybody's really quiet between these two goalposts, between the sentinel on the right and the sentinel on the left, silence in between. So you could literally have 200 meters of silence around a Cooper's hawk in the US. And if you were looking at it from above, it would be a circle. You know, it would be a circle of silence. But right on the edge, where sentinel is where alarms are also happening, far enough away to make noise without being in danger. They're yelling because they can see. If a bird is yelling at the edge of this alarm, it's because it can see the Cooper's hawk. Whereas this bird over here can't see the Cooper's hawk, isn't sure where it is, kind of gets an idea where it was last seen, but is silently staring in the direction where it thinks it might be. Like this one is doing the same thing, staring in the direction of where the hawk might be. And I'm not sure, is my mouse visible moving around? I'm actually using my mouse, okay. Notice this, where this dotted line of sentinel is, everybody on the other side of that line is singing and feeding like there's nothing wrong in the universe. And on the far side over here, the birds are singing and feeding as if nothing is wrong. Because behind the butt, behind the tail of a sentinel bird, these guys can relax. And we always say that baseline starts behind the butt of sentinel. I don't know if that needs to be translated, but you know, rear end, right? You might say that in Hebrew right now, just so people understand what I just said there.
If you should I say, you want me to phrase it in Hebrew?
Yes, please.
אם עומדים מחוץ לאזור ההשפעה של הנץ, אז למעשה רואים ישבנים של זקיפים.
Beautiful. I wanted to hear you say that in your language. That's wonderful. Thank you. Any comments, questions coming in?
There's an interesting question here. I'm not sure I'm understanding here. Yaniv, can you write that down again, because I'm not really understand what do you mean. Yaniv is asking, I saw a few times a fox walking after a few feet. I don't really understand what you mean, Yaniv. Please try to rephrase it.
Go to the editor, have the editor help you. Sweet.
Oh yeah, Tal is asking you, would you accept the same patterns in more crowded areas? A lot of people normally.
Definitely, definitely. This, you know, what's interesting about bird language is that it's easier to learn in the city than it is in the open country. Because in the city, the spaces where the birds and wildlife hang out are very condensed, right? So bird language is much more obvious in the city than it is in open wilderness areas, which is one of the reasons why it's a great tool to learn, because it's often people who live in the city who need the most help with nature connection, right? And because it's easy to learn in the city, it's actually working very well as a tool to get people reconnected with nature. But yes, this stuff works everywhere. And by the way, you probably noticed the same patterns apply with human beings. You know, when a person comes into a space with people who everyone is afraid of, like the boss, there's birdsicle going on in a different way, right? There's conversations get quiet, people look around, they shift in their chairs, right? And then if you're watching people, you'll notice the boss must have just come in and see what just happened in the room. Yeah, any other questions or comments there before we switch subjects entirely?
Yeah, there's a translation for the questions from before. Michelle saw a fox following a deer, really like kind of riding its wave. Is that possible? Is he
totally
actually? Yeah.
You know, what happens is that the deer is moving through and scaring insects and scaring lizards and small mammals, and they're running away from the deer to get out of its way, and the fox is seeing that movement and then being able to hunt. You know, they'll do the same thing with a tractor or a car driving through the bush, you know. Most extreme, when somebody starts a lawnmower in this island in the US called Kauai, which is part of the Hawaiian island chain, the moment you start your lawnmower and start pushing it into the grass, all the egrets, which are like herons, they all come flying in and they land and wait for the lawnmower to go by. Then they drop right down behind the lawnmower and hunt for things that have just been hit by the lawnmower. So these are all examples of that same pattern. Yes, most definitely. Great question. Thank you. All right. So this is what we do when we do a bird language experience. And I'm trusting that when you do bird language for educators, Stefan, you guys will be using kind of the same model from the bird language leaders we did in Pescadero? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much the same with, with some local stuff.
Right, of course. Yes. So what we do is we basically work in groups. We take, if you have 40 people in a big group, you break them into small groups. And the reason we break them into small groups is so that everyone can tell their story multiple times and that it won't take too much time. So people go out and they do a sit. In this case, these people are on their way to their sit or already sitting, but we don't normally sit this close to each other, but it just gives you an idea. You know, you're just kind of finding a place to sit, spread out on a landscape in a group. And so one group goes out to this area and then everyone spreads out and goes and sits. And when they're done sitting, they come back to their group leader and then they all share their stories and draw on a map. And this group goes out over to this area. Everyone spreads out, does a sit at the same time. They come back to their small groups. They tell their stories to each other. They write it on a map, and then we bring all the maps together. And that's how we can see bird language. And when they're sitting and they're making notes about what they're observing, they're not writing entire stories. You know, they're not writing page after page after words. They're just writing the bullet points. You know, what are the big events that I notice? They might only be 4 stations per period. And the periods are timed so that we call out to recognize a period has ended and a new one begins. And every time a period ends, we give a verbal signal that everybody repeats so the whole landscape can hear it. And then we draw a line across our notebook to say a period has ended, and then they start making notes for the next one. So it's pretty simple. You know, it's not hard to do, and it allows us to share our information back on maps. In this case, you're looking at 4 group maps coming together already, but imagine each map is color coded. Each color represents a different time period. Everyone is using the same color for time period 1. And then when they start recording on the map for period 2, they change colors. And so when the maps come together, the people who are trained in understanding how to read this can see all the things that happened across hundreds of meters of landscape all in one. And you can literally see those big circles from the Cooper's hawk, you know, where everyone's playing birdsicle. And you can see we call that an oppression or a silence, you know, and it's a dotted line in a circle that tells you during that period there was nothing going on in here. It was dead silent. This is a bird plow, birds flying in one direction. This is a ditch. This is a hook. This is a parabolic. So you can see, and you'll learn this if you go to a workshop with these guys. They'll teach you these things. It's not hard to learn. You learn it really quick, and then you go out and practice it right away, and it's super fun. This is a close-up of what a map might look like. You know, we're not going for perfect accuracy and detail. We tend to put the infrastructure like the roads, the house, even the pond, the fence, you know, everything is in black and white. So there's a background that we're looking at, and the colors are indicating periods of time. In this case, 3 American robins were flying in a bird plow from northeast to southwest. And we try to use good mapping conventions, always put north towards the top so people can all orient on their maps the same way. So that's pretty much what we do with bird language leaders, and it ends up working pretty well. You know, like I said, there's 61 communities practicing that in the US right now, and there's probably hundreds worldwide. And it seems like you all in Israel have quite a bit more going on than a lot of countries, because you guys are really, you know, you have about 350 people on this webinar. There's a lot of interest. It's very exciting. There's almost 100 people live right now, and I noticed in a lot of cameras that there's 3, 4, 5 people in that one room. So, You know, it's really wonderful that there's so much interest. And when you guys practice a little bit and get it down and get your chops, you know, I'll come over there and visit, and we'll have a wonderful time together. I can't wait. I love doing bird language workshops in other countries because I get to learn so many new cool things and meet new people, and that's super fun for me. I have to keep moving because the sun is moving in. It's making a stripe across my face. Yeah, so that's what I have to say, and I hope that's exciting to you. Lilac-breasted roller on the picture from the Kalahari, lovely bird, and yeah, there's what I got to say. But I would encourage you to you know, try to participate in these trainings, and know also that you want to practice this in your own backyard. You don't want to have to go far away to learn bird language. Learn it right outside your door. Set up a chair in the shade outside your door. Take your phone calls there for work. You know, when you have to be there, you know, you can multitask. You can learn bird language while hanging out at home. And the way I like to look at it is I'm already paying enough in rent. I might as well use that rent to subsidize my education, right? You know, because the birds work for free, you know, and it's a great way to go. But yeah, I'll stop there. And if there's any questions or comments, we can go from there. And thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah, that was great, John. Thank you. There's a question from Eitan. He writes, John, you mentioned something about how to pass this knowledge to children. Something you noticed in Africa.
Yeah, so in Africa it's pretty easy. They've got the advantage of having lions, right? So one of the elders comes to the story when all the children are sitting by the fire, and he says to them, a long time ago, the lions ate a lot of us. They ate a lot of us. And that's all he had to say to the children. And then he walked away. And you want to translate that?
Sure thing. לפני הרבה מאוד שנים, האריות אכלו רבים מאיתנו. הם אכלו רבים מאיתנו. ואז הוא הולך.
For some reason, children really pay attention to that story. And the very next day, when the sun rises, they're all looking for tracks from lions on the ground, and they're looking around and they're listening, you know, so they have a great need to pay attention. So when we teach bird language in California, we have lions. We have California mountain lions, and we tell the children, you know, when we're going to go out in the forest, we're like, hey, you know, there's lions out here, and we should be aware of them. We don't have to walk around terrified. All we have to do is listen to the birds and the squirrels and the deer, and they'll tell us where the lion is so that we can feel safe. And man, they pay attention. They definitely pay attention. One of my favorite things to do is to bring them to the lion tracks in the forest and show them lion tracks early when I'm training them in nature awareness, because as soon as they see a lion track on the ground, they start looking around, you know, and they haven't been looking around before that. You know, it's like there is a direct nervous system priority to pay attention. That's what I was saying earlier. Our nervous system is hardwired to keep us safe, hardwired. And, you know, that's, if there's a trick, you know, you're basically awakening people's sense of, I would need to pay attention, right? Well, the cool thing is with songbirds, you know, the songbirds, their lion is the sparrowhawk. And because we have such a strong communication history with birds, our nervous system is trained to be aware of what the songbirds are afraid of. So we make that transition quickly with children. We're like, hey, there may not be lions here in the city of San Francisco, where this lady teaches bird language at preschool. Okay, she takes her preschoolers out every week, every single preschooler throughout the whole school. They all have a sit spot. They all go out once a week. They all sit and watch the birds, come back in small groups, and then they act it out like a play. You know how children like to do plays? You don't need to draw maps. They can do it with their bodies. They get to tell their story with their bodies, and then they reenact bird language experiences with each other as the predators and the birds. And then they do artwork. They draw art, you know, they draw pictures, you know, and they tell stories. And they do that once a week all year at this preschool. And it's made a huge difference for these children. The parents are very, very excited about how things like anxiety and other mental health related things are not with these children. They're noticing their children are different from the children in other schools that don't get bird language. So, you know, this is easy to teach to children. They want to learn it. They like to play act. They like to reenact. You know, they like to act out the body language of the different bird shapes. They love games where you have to guess what this means, you know. So if you have a couple of people acting out a bird language scenario, and then the children have to guess what caused it, what predator may have caused that bird language scenario, they love to do that. They love solving mysteries and puzzles. And what is bird language but a series of mysteries and puzzles, you know? So it's very easy to pass on to children. And again, very good for their mental health, very good for their well-being, really good for their nervous system, because it causes something called sensory integration. And sensory integration is the cure for nature deficit disorder. And I don't know if Richard Louv's book has made it into Israel or not, but that would be worth explaining what I just said in a few words there, Stefan.
Yeah, well, Richard Louv is not really, it was not translated, so it's not it's not around, but well, maybe we'll add that to the follow-up email.
Right.
Yeah, it will be a more whole explanation to that.
Sweet. Well, I'm so enjoying seeing all of you in Israel. Thank you for coming and visiting me on a snowy winter's day in New York State. Really appreciate everyone's attention, participation. I can't read anything you're saying in Hebrew, but it's really fun to see it going by anyway. And I look forward to hopefully meeting some of you in Israel someday.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Uri and Stefan. This has been super fun. I'm so excited to be sharing this with you all.
Thanks a lot, John. Thanks a lot, everybody. It was great having you here. And I know you enjoyed it. And there's so much there. And yeah, definitely. We hope to see you soon.
All right. Shalom.